Greetings. My name is Barry Martin Snyder, and our website is luminousself.com. Today we're going to talk about a term you've probably heard, timelines. Maybe don't know exactly what the term means specifically. And we'll define timelines, how they apply to our journey as souls, and how specifically apply to this really crucial time on the planet where we as souls are on rapidly changing evolutionary vectors. So first of all, what is a timeline? Obviously, it seems to point to some sort of vector within the realm of time. And that's exactly what it is from an evolutionary standpoint for each of us as souls. Just taking a step back to looking at this whole cycle of a soul's journey from the moment it leaves the Godhead, while it goes out into creation, to the very depths of creation, involuting itself into form, into matter, until it comes to a point where then it begins the journey backward, evolving backward, outward, towards its original starting point within the source. When the soul comes into the realms of time and space, its evolution is defined by its progression through time. Its journey is demarcated in a series of lifetimes, during which it is continually sculpting itself until it can reflect more and more of the light, love, life, and all the divine qualities and characteristics of its true essential nature as a holographic fractal aspect of God, one, all that is. During its process in time, it's on vectors that are defined by how rapidly it's moving in its journey from source to full individualization and evolution to evolving back out to source. All this occurs over obviously vast amounts of time, but is defined by time itself. And that's why we call them timelines. At any moment, each soul is on a particular timeline that will define at present, in that moment, its time sequence journey in that cycle from source to full individualization and involution into form and matter, and back out to source. My first awareness of timelines came many decades ago when I was in India, pursuing my spiritual journey, hoping to find and experience a being who had realized God. During that time there, I spent a lot of time with a friend who was an Indian man who I had known in Southern California, who had moved back to Southern India. One particular day we were in Bangalore, in Karnataka state, and he mentioned that he was going to go see something called a Shukanadi. And that sort of fascinated me. And I asked him what a Shukanadi was, and he said a Shukanadi is a man who holds all these ancient wooden tablets that have the life story, the evolutionary story, many lifetimes of various souls on them. And if you're on those records, the Shukanadi can tell you all about your present, your past, present, and future journeys of embodiment. something told me I should go and check this out. So I did. Shukanati came out. He was a very old man at that time, probably in his 80s, all dressed in white, the traditional garb of the Brahmin with the single white thread around him. He spoke no English, so his son, who was an engineer, had to interpret. I told him I'd like to find out whether I was on these records and ask him what the records were. The son explained that thousands of years ago, there was a great king in southern India who knew that he was going to die within a few months. It was his hope that he could achieve liberation. So he called together a number of rishis, who were the ancient, enlightened, and God-realized seers of India who read the Vedas, to explore all of his incarnations, past and present, to find out what he needed to do to complete so he could achieve moksha or liberation and leave embodiment and not to have to come back after this lifetime, which is the goal of human embodiment in that path, and most paths for that matter. He explained that these rishis did investigations into all the embodiments of this king and found all the different other souls that were related to that king's life stream through all those embodiments. And all those beings had their journeys written down on these tablets. I saw the tablets. They were long, probably a foot long, maybe an inch or so wide, wooden tablets with Sanskrit etchings on them. Shukanati asked to see my palm, my right hand. He got out a magnifying glass and began to look at it. He said nothing. Then he disappeared for about 15-20 minutes and came back out with these tablets, with a bunch of tablets, and looked at me again and said he had a few questions for me, again through an interpreter, his son. He said, "You were born on one side of your country and in early adulthood went to the other side. Is that true?" I said, "Yes, it's true. I was born in Pennsylvania and I moved to Southern California in my mid-20s, early 20s. He said, "You were born on the 12th month, the 5th day of the 12th month." And I said, "Yes, indeed, and my birthday is December 5th. He said, "You have been to India twice." And I said, No, I've only been to India once." And then I thought, no, it's true. I came to India from the US, but then I went to Sri Lanka for a while and came back to India. So in fact, I had been to India twice. He said that I had a mother and father who both had certain psychological problems and was an only child. And I said yes. He said, "Yes, this confirms that you are on these tablets. And now we can talk about this incarnation." He began to tell me all about this life, all of which was accurate. And then he predicted the future, and this is where it gets relevant to the timeline. He said that I would meet the woman who I was to spend my life with in the next few months while I was within India. He said I would marry that woman, that I would leave my country but eventually come back, that we would have 2 children, and then I would leave embodiment and achieve moksha or liberation at the age of 83. I accepted all this as fact, because everything else that he expressed was absolutely real and true. I didn't think about the concept of timelines at the time, but it was obvious that there was this thread of incarnations that existed through time and space that linked me to this moment and proceeded out ahead of me and was clearly delineated by these tablets that knew all these things about me. As it turns out, within a few months, I met a German woman who took me to see my guru, who I then moved to Europe to live with. We got married, came to America, and I felt that we would have 2 children. But then something happened. I began to have contacts with the being Christ. And I felt a deep desire to achieve union in my own Christed self. This yearning began to grow in me, and I began to feel a disillusionment with my life pattern. I no longer wanted to work in the financial field, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue in a life that would involve this particular relationship. Although I love this woman dearly, she was the idealized woman of my life. I felt like the call was God. Within a couple of months, she met another man. We went apart. I left that whole life and moved to Hawaii. I was in a lot of conflict because the Shukanati clearly had said we would be together and that we would have 2 children. I thought something was wrong. But then I met the woman who was to be not only my life partner, but my soul partner through the ages, my twin flame. And when we met, magic happened, unparalleled, that has resulted in so many awakenings. Such a journey that brings me to this point. One day, the subject of timelines came back up, and I was shown very clearly that I had jumped timelines. That the timeline or evolutionary vector I was on ended in Santa Barbara when I went apart from my wife then, who I was supposed to be with, to the end, and sought God on a whole new level. Something happened within me, this deep desire for union, that caused this jump in timelines. That is the nature of timelines. They're evolutionary vectors that determine our progress back to God. In essence, what happened is I took a shortcut. Somehow, within my being, this desire for cosmic union, for God union, arose, and it caused me to want God more than anything else. One day in a group rebirthing session, I found myself going into a trance state where I was overwhelmed with this desire to be with God, and I sat up in the middle of this group and started to scream, cry out at the top of my lungs, "Father, Father, 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 Father." It was like this cry, "Father, come to me. Father, take me home." Why is this all so important now? It's always important. But why it's so important now is that at the end of every age, there's an acceleration in evolutionary vectors or timelines. It is possible now to evolve as never before in the last thousands of years. These timelines are speeding up, and our path back to Source is accelerating, no matter which timeline we are on. All timelines are different. Everyone has their own timelines, and there are group timelines. The Earth is about ready to make an evolutionary leap out of a third and fourth dimensional environment to a fourth and fifth dimensional environment. The great shift of the ages, prophesied by all the great traditions and native traditions. What this time is about now is that humanity as a whole is going into an evolutionary chrysalis. We're like third dimensional physical human caterpillars, ready to dissolve our 3D physical identities and our 4D soul identities and make a huge shift into a fourth dimensional physical reality and a fifth dimensional soul level reality. And this will happen in the lifetime of most who are listening to this. We're all on different vectors towards that, as Peter Russell called, a white hole in time, where we will leave, go through a singularity and leave everything we've known. As Christ Jesus said, he talked about a new heaven and a new earth, for the old one shall pass away. It's literally that comprehensive. Not just a new earth, but a new heaven. I mean, it's this whole multidimensional environment is going to shift. It has never been more important to know what our purpose is now, because our evolution is speeding up so much. And the more we are aligned with it, the more we can proceed more rapidly and maybe even jump evolutionary timelines. But timelines are separating rapidly. People are going at different rates. A way to think about this that was shown to me some time ago was to think about trains leaving a station, a number of trains leaving. Say the Earth is the big train. Let's say the Earth is going at 6 miles an hour. Well, there are some souls that are going at 8 or 10 miles an hour. They're literally evolving faster than the speed the Earth is. And those beings will simply achieve moksha or liberation and quote-unquote ascend, or leave this evolutionary platform called Earth and go on to other realms. Beings have been doing it since the beginning of time. There are other beings that may only be going 3 miles an hour. Now, they're not keeping up with the evolutionary pace of the Earth. So from the standpoint of the Earth, it appears like they're going backwards 3 miles an hour, or devolving. They're really not. They're going ahead at 3. But the Earth is going at 6. To those beings that are going at 8 or 9, those beings going at 3 appear to be really going a different direction and really going backwards. But they're not. They're just going at a different rate, to a different place. And there's no judgment or evaluation in this. It's not like we're on a race back to Source. We're each individual aspects of Source. Nothing can go wrong. There's no good or bad here. God, Source, wants all of our journeys. Getting back faster is not better. It's just the vector we're on. Those beings who aren't going as fast as other beings who are going faster, they have a more protracted, more circuitous route. They will have more experiences in the denser levels of creation. They will bring all that richness in their souls back to Source. These are what we call timelines. There's people that are on timelines that are diverging from planet Earth, wanting to stay more in denser levels of reality, may need more third or want more third dimensional incarnation, and beings that are wanting and ready to go with Earth to to the new heaven, new earth, and beings who are even going faster and going even beyond that. All those are happening. As we approach this singularity, this white hole in time, these are diverging more quickly, because the acceleration towards that white hole, it's like as we go into a singularity, be it a white hole or a black hole, when we cross that event horizon, which we already have, we're on these inexorable paths to that singularity. And it speeds up. It's like water going down a drain. We're swirling into that singularity faster and faster. The trains are leaving the station. They have left the station. And we're all in our particular train. And we're not on the train with other people. And that's why we may find ourselves losing contact with certain people, not feeling we can connect with them. Karen and I are going to talk about this, personal experience of this, in the next video. But that's what's going on. I'd like to go ahead a little bit as to what I've been shown, what I've experienced, as to where this goes. As we pass through this singularity and emerge into a fourth and fifth dimensional reality, as we come to that point, there is not one experience that defines the Earth's progression. Because at a fourth dimensional level, there is not linear time as we know it. There can be numerous timelines. There was a book written called Mass Dreams of the Future by Chet Snow that contained future progressions. It came out 80s or 90s, where Chet Snow and a woman named Helen Wambach, who was a very renowned past life regressionist in the Bay Area, who worked with many famous people, movie stars, etc., experimented with the idea of regressing people into the future. And they did thousands of these all over the earth to try to get any bias culturally, socially, politically, whatever, religiously. And then they combined the results of this and found that there were 4 evolutionary timelines. The one timeline was the future of the Earth. It was very bad condition, virtually destroyed, with just a group of beings wandering around in the sort of the wreckage of the cities, and the planet had been fairly decimated by environmental destruction and other things. The second timeline was a group of people who were living on a planet that had gone through a lot, but wasn't as destroyed. They were living in terrestrial environments, often underground bunkers or domes and things that were self-contained environments, partially contained environments. The third group is living off-planet in extraterrestrial environments, mostly spaceships, etc. And the fourth was living on an Edenic Earth, completely pristine. There was no disease, there was no separation, there was no war, no conflict. It was the Eden that we know is possible. What Wambach and Snow came to understand is that these were all timelines, and they would eventually converge sometime in the future. Just like in Revelations, they talk about the 1,000 years until the descent of the new heaven, new earth. And that all the souls who were died would then come back, would be raised, and join that. So everybody is on their timeline that will eventually come to that new earth or beyond, and reach that fourth and the fifth dimensional nexus, all in their own way. And I've had a couple of experiences of that fourth and fifth dimensional earth projected there, been taken there, as have other people. I know it's real. That's what awaits us. I think the important thing to realize now, that we're not going back. The reality we've lived in is over. We've crossed the Rubicon, the event horizon. We're moving towards this singularity. We're all going on our timelines towards that singularity and through it to wherever we go next. It's important to align with the fact that we are these human caterpillars that are going through this process of dissolution. Our 3D identities are being dissolved, just like happens to a caterpillar in the chrysalis. It dissolves away. So slowly, these imaginal cells can begin to arise in it that bring forth the DNA, the hologram of the butterfly. It's time for us to understand that's the journey and to surrender to it. Because that's the evolutionary imperative. So thank you for joining me in this. Karen and I, as I mentioned, will be talking about our own particular experiences, and one I think that many of you are experiencing right now in 2022, about how this is manifesting tangibly in your current life. So I thank you very much. Much love to you, and God bless.